This episode of In an Instant is powered by Wasabi.
Today, we can't even really hide the camera we're discussing below frame because this is the Intrepid Camera 8x10 Mark II, a modern field camera that has expanded access to 8x10 film with its reasonable price point and lightweight design. But is this big old camera big for business? I think. I don't really know. We're gonna have to talk about it.
The kind of photography that would become part of the human being. Press a button and have the picture.
Welcome to In an Instant. My name is Ben, and this tank dominating the table is Biggie Bags, my red-bellowed Intrepid 8x10. It is on this cherry wagon that I have shot a fair amount of 8x10 celluloid and mostly black and white, some traditional 4x5, plenty of expired Polaroid 4x5 instant peel-apart film, which is one of my favorite formats, some Instax with the Lomo graph lock back, Fuji's defunct FP100C, and the worrisomely scarce Polaroid 8x10, which is one of the most dazzling large formats still technically produced, though there hasn't been a batch in way too long. If you're unfamiliar with Intrepid Camera, they are a company that has become a bedrock manufacturer of large format cameras, creating the accessible and popular Intrepid 4x5, the 5x7, the compact and larger, and the granddaddy 8x10, currently in its Mark II iteration like Biggie Bags here. The large format photography market is really interesting because there are many folks producing large format cameras, unlike other film formats which suffer from a lack of modern options. Intrepid, though, has really risen to the top in terms of name recognition, and despite many folks cranking out 4x5s, Intrepid really is the only game in town for affordable 8x10 cameras. Now, let me stop down here for a second. I have had this camera for about a year and a half, and I've held off reviewing it in large part because I did not have a good experience with this camera initially, and I was honestly kind of pissed off, which is never the mood to carry into a camera review. I'm of the mind that the definition of a camera is a light-sealed box that has an opening for the act of light gathering. Unfortunately, upon arrival, after 9 weeks of giddy anticipation while Intrepid produced the camera, this 8x10 was not a light-sealed box. It had more leaks than Edward Snowden after ripping a fat J in the parking garage of the NSA headquarters of Fort Meade, Maryland. This sweet slice of Swiss cheese unfortunately had me heated as I attempted in a slow correspondence with Intrepid to diagnose the leaky culprit, trying every method in the book, ultimately surrendering the camera to my boy Jules at Brooklyn Film Camera, who is the darling angel that finally mended the bellows for me. Sometimes you just gotta let daddy step in. Not only that, but the top left clip on the rear, which cinches the sheet holder spring back, broke off very early on, now glued and taped. The bottom left mount has also snapped off entirely, and that thing's just gone. There were many times during this initial period of Intrepid ownership where I thought, this isn't very chill at all. That was 2020 me. This is 2022 me, and I have since had some of my most cherished photographic experiences with this camera, and the woes are behind us. So let's talk some more about Biggie Bags. How about a basic rundown? This is a very light 8x10 camera, weighing in at just over 5 pounds, primarily made of plywood with some aluminum. It is unbelievable how portable this camera is. When you think of 8x10, you imagine yourself keeled over on a trail in a national park, vomiting uncontrollably, just like didn't drink enough water, wondering why you couldn't have just been happy with a Pentax K1000, but this entire camera with a lens and a holder and my meter and my loop can all fit into a large topo backpack. That is wild and so nice for general usability, removing a layer of the I don't really want to deal with that today mentality. This is not some limited rigid body either. It has virtually all the movements you need with tilt, rise, shift, and swing on the front standard, and rear tilt, though there's no rear swing. I kind of never really think about missing that. It has 5 front standard starting mounts for where to place the lens, and then a rear screw control for precision focusing. Although the aforementioned plastic clips on the rear standard can snap off, they serve to allow rotation of the spring back to landscape, or swapping it out for the 4x5 reducer back or the 5x7 reducer back, which is extremely easy and awesome. The 4x5 reducer back has helpful graph lock clips, though they're really not very secure, and it scares the shit out of me every time I'm putting anything of weight on there. The 8x10 ground glass, which I think is actually really nice, can be upgraded to a new Fresnel screen for brighter viewing, though I've yet to explore that. Might have to. People say it's pretty good. The most important decision you will make when buying any large format camera is the lenses you're investing in. After all, that is what will dictate what your images will look like. In terms of focal length, the enormous field of view of 8x10 makes it so that something like 300 millimeters is considered a quote-unquote normal lens. I only have one lens for this body, and it is the 300 millimeter Nikkor W56. I really love this lens. It's basically all I ever need, but when I put the 4x5 reducer back on it, the crop factor becomes kind of ludicrous. So if you plan to do that, I'd get a wider lens for use with 4x5, like a 210 or 250. So when I initially placed my order for the Intrepid 8x10, it was a bit of an opportunistic leap of faith. If you haven't previously had an 8x10 camera, you're sort of counting on the incredible potential of the system, despite its challenges, and knowing full well not every circumstance will accommodate this mammoth. In my mind, investing in an 8x10 camera with its various components was a long-term buy-in to special experiences that were to come, taking photos that I would cherish forever, and spending meaningful time with whoever is sitting in front of the lens. I'm a professional photographer, but I wasn't fooling myself into thinking this was a business opportunity with future clients, but rather a business opportunity for my heart. In fact, thus far, that is exactly the role this camera has fulfilled, as I make sure to wrangle anybody visiting the studio into an 8x10 session, or bring it around for special shoots where I really feel like we can take a breath and craft a slow portrait. This thing is like an heirloom machine. Days spent with it are filled with curiosity and collaboration. Your subject sees this big, beautiful, old school photographic tank, and they want to contribute to crafting the perfect image. I had a friend who I will spare not mentioning by name almost brought to tears by the very concept of what he was seeing through the 8x10 ground glass. A zero latency projection of reality to be imprinted on something very realistic in scale and detail, bringing you closer to what the human brain senses than any photo they'd seen before. My boy was no joke, like head and hands on the couch repeating a near perfect representation of reality, a near perfect representation of reality. It was very hype for me. Images from the 8x10 almost feel three-dimensional because the field of view is so immediate and immersive. The limited depth of field created by that field of view forms this beautiful focus fall off, and combined with movements can sweep you into an entirely new perspective. I would never suggest that 8x10 is a format that everybody needs to get into because it's expensive, requires a lot of technical skill and experience, requires a labor of love, and mostly because it's expensive. A pack of 10 sheets of Portra 400 8x10 costs $250. At $25 a shot plus developing costs, that is a painful doozy. I have found the most realistic and affordable system for shooting it is to get Cat Lab's 80 8x10 film, which comes 25 sheets to a box, only $4 a sheet. And since I develop at home in my Stearman Press 8x10 tank, it's really not that expensive. But the setup costs are painful. One 8x10 dual sheet holder alone is about $100, whereas 4x5 holders are a dime a dozen. So tread carefully. I know many of my photographer friends are feeling the pull here. You feel it tingling. If you can make this work for you, it's quite incredible to own something that you will always have for that special image. All right, pros and cons, let's send it. Pros, the lightweight design of the Intrepid gives an astounding portability factor. It's an 8x10 you can really carry around with you in the field, and it won't just be locked up in the studio or require a suitcase to haul around. Movements and flexibility. This dumper can basically do everything. With the reducer back, there's an insane amount of Graph-Lock accessories like film backs and all kinds of stuff you can shoot on the Intrepid. And price. This is a big one. This camera is currently 480 euros. When I purchased it, it was around 20% cheaper than that, so I'm not really sure if the price changes based on supply and production demands. But that is a very affordable 8x10. Most go for at least 2 times that or more, and the ones on the affordable end are typically very heavy studio cameras, so that really is one of the most important assets Intrepid provides here. And cons. Quality control is a major issue. One of my buds also got an 8x10 and had the exact same problems as me. I don't understand how cameras are leaving the factory that aren't light sealed. Not to be flippant, but like you had one job in that regard. And I know a lot of old school guys would be like, oh, shut the f up. You should just be able to seal your own camera and lacquer the wood and engineer your way to a proper tool. No. I know it's on the lower end of cost, but if it costs $650, it should arrive functioning, end of story. Also, the other components that have snapped off, that's not great. You know, more aluminum and less plastic, I'm sure will be improvements on the future models. All right, well, if you're already a subscriber on this channel, you've seen plenty of Biggie Bags, and you most certainly will see more of him in the future. Hopefully Intrepid can continue to refine what they've got here, because conceptually, this is amazing. I would love a hardwood edition in the future, Intrepid. If you're listening, hit me up. And thank you for watching. In an instant, drop a Polaroid 8x10 processor right onto that subscribe button. Throw some dough at the Patreon, and thanks to all the patrons who have contributed so far. Stay tuned for more reviews, breakdowns, shoots, guides, and all things instant. Bye.